millions, and we will be. Because it starts right here.
Guilty! The truth never dies! The truth never dies! Come on!
Welcome to Naptown People's Radio, a weekly podcast brought to you by the Indianapolis branch of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm your host, Danny Abdullah, and I'm joined by my comrade and co-host,
Derek Ford.
We're here to guide you through the pressing issues facing Indianapolis from the perspective of our people, not our oppressors. And as organizers involved in these issues, we're not just talking about the news, we're making it happen. So today we're welcomed by Bryce Gustafson. We've given a shout out to Bryce in the past, but just to jog everyone's memories, Gustafson has been with Citizens Action Coalition since 2009 and has been the program manager since 2019. So quite a while. Bryce and Derek really get into what exactly are AI data centers and what makes them distinct from others, as well as the need to be organized to overcome these encroaching and oppressive forces that continue to dig their roots into Indiana soil. But before Bryce breaks it down, we're going to have Derek go into breaking it down, what's happening in Naptown this week in the Naptown Breakdown. So what's popping out this week, Derek?
All right. Well, I just want to focus on a couple of things so we can get in depth and also, continue maintain some continuity over issues that we've been talking about. So on November 19th, Braun authorized the deployment of 300 Indiana National Guardsmen to Washington, D.C. To start next month. In other words, in just a couple of days. And he did this, of course, at the request of Trump, who's currently utilizing ICE and government security forces to intimidate the public, give them training for suppressing resistance that they know is coming within the United States. And so claiming that, these are meant to reduce crime rates, we've already debunked that. We've shown that, violent crime rates, however, one counts those, right? Have decreased in every single city. The people of DC ultimately prevented Trump from doing this on his own. And so he's now having to sort of call on allies or those who he can whip into shape to, make a big show of force. I mean, really 300 National Guardsmen in DC, Chocolate City. I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make, but the important thing is that people are fighting back. The 300 troops are set to do training at Camp Atterbury, which is a base slated to be a detention center for immigrants detained by ICE. And so they have, terrifying environments, and it's more akin to an occupation rather than public safety. And after these orders were authorized by Braun, a judge ordered an end to the Washington, D.C. National Guard deployments by December, which, if enacted and respected, would ostensibly prevent the National Guard from deploying to D.C. Also, organization and commitment from groups such as About Face. We heard from Lucas Lee on a previous episode about a new campaign, the Right to Refuse campaign, that if you go to the Liberation Center website, you can see several people have already signed on and saying, we urge you to refuse orders. We ourselves will be refusing orders because they're unjust. And the campaign really aims to get, National Guardsmen to realize they're on the same side as the people, because the Pentagon brass, they're like the elite of the elite. But the rank and file members of the military are not. They're really just workers who, don't have other means to live, right? They're forced into it, and they're used as cannon fodder in these wars. And they have much more in common with the immigrants that they're, supposed to be terrorizing than they do with the people who are giving these orders, especially Braun, especially Trump. And this campaign received a lot of attention in the last couple of months that, even among Democrats, right, a ruling class party, there are calls to, refuse orders. They're probably using this as a political sort of play, but regardless, it's significant, right? And the entire situation is born out of the right wing's desire to escalate the class war within, of the United States, because they know that, people aren't going to take what's coming, and they're not taking what's coming lying down. To learn more about that, Answer Indianapolis released a statement in late October in support of About Face's Right to Refuse campaign. We support and encourage Indiana National Guard's members to refuse their orders because they are unconstitutional, and they have the people supporting them. We got your back here at the center. So if you're a veteran wanting to get involved, just visit the website. And then related to that, in terms of the Trump and the ultra right wing dictatorship in the U.S., not a fascist dictatorship, but a dictatorship in the U.S., because all forms of bourgeois rule are dictatorships. We have the redistricting controversy that's unfolding here and nationwide over the past few weeks. Of course, several multiple Republican senators, and interestingly, like Indianapolis City County Council Democrat, have been quote unquote like swatted, which is when somebody calls the cops with a false report in order to send SWAT on them, or they threaten them with violence and other things. They're like docs or whatever. And so these incidents follow an inter-party dispute over redistricting, when people are like, why are we doing this, right? What is even the point of this? This is like hugely unpopular. I want to be elected again next year. Nobody's going to elect me if I do this. And so many defected, and then, Braun himself had to get whipped into shape by Trump. This is not only some conflict inside the ruling class. I think it's important to remember, as they are represented by both parties. And in fact, it speaks to a longer history that dates back to the late 1900s and the counter-revolution against the radical Reconstruction. So the landmark 14th Amendment, right, granting all persons equal protection under the law, was allegedly intended to address the legacy of white supremacy and anti-Black racism, right? In other words, it was intended allegedly for African Americans, Africans in America, Black people. But the Supreme Court case is also the one that defined corporate personhood. And it's always cited as a precedent for corporate personhood. So that's nothing new, the idea that corporations are people, right?
Yeah.
So what's really interesting is that, and this is has to do with some railroad case, the Santa Clara case in California, but it's rarely remembered for the issue of taxation, and more specifically, the role of railroad monopolies to claim corporate personhood. So one of the railroad's defenses at the court hearing included arguing that equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment applied to corporations, right? So therefore, the state couldn't tax them differently than other citizens. And yet, this was only a minor point among the 6 major arguments, right? Moreover, it seems like the Chief Justice, Morrison Waite, quickly dismissed the argument in the case by stating that it is a general agreed upon principle that the clause applies to corporations, right? Now, this is according to a headnote. So for those who don't know, headnotes are written by journalists at the top of, they appear on the top of the Supreme Court documents, right? So in other words, this was nowhere in the actual case. A journalist put that in there, and that has been cited for, what was this, 1888?
100 years, yeah.
For this, right? And so so the Supreme Court didn't establish a legal precedent that corporations have the same legal protections as natural persons. And Waite's comment above, right, was not part of the official ruling. So they're not legally binding, right? The headnote is significant in a few ways because first, the report of Waite's comments didn't include any legal or constitutional justification, which is usually required, right? It was just like, oh yeah, everybody knows that. And if that was the way we issue decrees, then God bless us. But it was an assertion, right? So as a result, though, since 1886, the status of corporations as people is protected under the Constitution has been a source of controversy. The other interesting thing, which is 100% true, is that almost none of the 14th Amendment cases heard by the Supreme Court between the passing and ratification of the 14th Amendment and 1938 had anything to do with African Americans, formerly enslaved people, or Black people, or Africans in America. And this is in a dissenting opinion on Connecticut Gen Life Inc. C.V. Johnson, when Justice Hugo Black cited Miller's majority opinion in the 1873 Slaughterhouse cases, doubting that the 13th and 14th Amendments would include anyone except Black people. But he continued, and I quote, "Of the cases in this court in which the 14th Amendment was applied during the first 50 years after its adoption, less than 0.5% invoked it in protection of the Negro race, and more than 50% asked that its benefits be extended to corporations." So this is, in other words, that was in reaction, to as part of it to overthrow radical Reconstruction, and then the second attempt at radical Reconstruction, right, in the really mid 1950s onto the 1960s and 1970s. Right. When all these, when Black people won, the right to vote, right. And all these tremendous gains were made. Like the less important, I think, were the legal ones. The most important were like the mass consciousness that shifted, and in radical ways too, right? I mean, you had soldiers and veterans, you had young people, you had people of all oppressed identities and nationalities, uniting sexualities for the first time under different causes, and not just protesting. I mean, there were many armed groups, that saw themselves as domestic manifestations of the global class war that our class was winning at the time. And that, just shook the ruling class to its core. And so ever since then, they've been looking for a way to repeal every single gain that we won during that time period. And this is the way that they're trying to do it now, right? Disenfranchising Black voters, but this could also cause the next big uprising because, we are all told that we have the right to vote, even though we know that's not true, right?
Right.
But I mean, how many people would just be like, wait a second, like who haven't thought about that critically or didn't know, be like, wait, like why shouldn't these people be able to vote, or this group or that group? Don't we at least you're like a quote unquote citizen, right?
Yeah.
So this could also be, the next they have to be very careful about this, which is why they're going about the redistricting way, right? But nonetheless, there's it's a bad look on them, and it's something we need to keep our eye on because it could be a potentially explosive point in the class struggle here and across the country.
Yeah, I think first off, it's always very interesting to see the what is the term, like smokes and mirrors that the ruling class will go through to attack the working class, to attack the Black working class in particular, and make it look like, no, we're doing this to help, or although I don't know how I don't know how you can sell that. How does redistricting help literally anybody? But except for, the ruling class. But going through all of these avenues to oppress people, first off, that just sounds exhausting, that's exhausting. It's not that hard to be kind, as cheesy as that might sound, it's not that hard to just be a decent human being. Or to be a human being at all.
Maybe they aren't.
I was going to say, maybe they're not. Maybe they're a corporation.
Yeah,
maybe they're not
go.
a human. Maybe they're actually a robot. I don't know. My 6-year-old is convinced that a lot of cops are robots right now. So,
Okay.
which
Let's have him on the show next week.
he might be onto something. He might be onto something. Yeah, that's wild. And also to sit, there's so much to break down there. First off, sometimes you talk and I'm like, dang, Derek is really a professor. I definitely felt like I was in a lecture. I was following it and I was like, this is amazing. This is great. I was like, okay, Professor Ford. I got to show up to DePaul one day and just like sit in the back and take a class
You're always welcome.
with you. Yeah, I know I am. Yeah, I got to do it one day. Like you said, this is not necessarily just like the bourgeois not getting along right now. This is also like, right. This feels like tyranny. It feels, it has like maybe elements of it, not necessarily fascism, but definitely like feels like fascism light almost. Like the idea of one group doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? Like, okay, I'm not going to get reelected. The people who voted me in do not agree with this. Let me listen to them for once. And those who are trying to get something passed, trying to oppress people, then, oh, okay, let me send the cops after you. Let me use force to get you to do what I want you to do. Which also goes to like what we have said multiple times on this podcast, but of course outside of the podcast, that like, the police, their entire job is to uphold the status quo. It is to uphold the bourgeois. It is to uphold like the billionaires, and that's exactly what they do, right? Like you can't tell me, at least not like a few of those cops, maybe not all of them, but a few of them had to know like, yeah, this is BS. You're going out here for BS reasons, right? Like these people have not actually done whatever it is that they sent you out here to do. Like they did not do that. But also they're used to doing that. They don't care.
Yeah.
How many times have the cops shown up to like arrest somebody for BS reasons, whatever. It's just a Tuesday to them. But wild to like to see that happening, and not behind closed doors, right?
Yeah.
And happening to people who you would think like could not be touched by the system, in that way. And
how's that make you feel?
I
know I like to talk about feelings, so I'm just.
Let's not lie.
No.
How does that make me feel? I'm a Gemini, so I'm very complex. You're a Gemini too. I don't know if y'all knew that. This is hosted by two Geminis. But on one hand, it's like infuriating, right? Because again, it's like, first off, that's my tax money being used to like go. Y'all could actually be like, I don't know, arresting billionaires. So you could actually like be doing something useful. And once again, you're not. So in that sense, it's infuriating. On the other hand, like, I don't really care if city county councilors go to jail. They probably should be in jail for something, and they're just not. So like, the sympathy, I don't really have any sympathy for them at all. It is also like a good reminder. Well, I would hope it would be a good reminder to them that like, hey, yeah, you're not running this, right? Like you're not, like you are, like the city county councilors obviously like get money from the bourgeois, and they have like, I guess they have some kind of win in like us being oppressed, but like at the end of the day, like you're closer to us than you are to them. And like, I would hope that would be a reminder to them that like, hey, this is not actually going to benefit you in the long run as well.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
Well, I feel it two ways, as a Gemini, I guess. No. I mean, part of me is like, maybe this is what they should be spending their money on, sending SWAT teams after these elected officials. Of course, unfortunately for the wrong reasons, but it's like, you're getting a little bit of taste of your own medicine, Remember when they sent 4 SWAT teams after our comrades in Denver?
Yeah.
For like kidnapping a police station because they had a protest around it, Luckily they stood tall and we organized around them nationwide and they got out on all charges. But, so that in that sense, it's like, yeah, but I don't really care what happens to them. I mean, I care what happens to the people. And that's ultimately what matters, right? I mean, and I don't think it's going to go through because I have faith in the people. I have faith in our ability to fight back. And like, if we, you can't make people fight back, but if we, we could do our best to agitate, so even if there isn't a big fight back movement, we're using this as a point of agitation. Like, this is not a democracy that we live in, it's the dictatorship of the ruling class. One is like they're donkeys, and one is what jackasses.
They're elephants.
Elephants, yeah. So
Come on.
so they're not people. And no disrespect to elephants and donkeys, because donkeys actually. That's a great book called "The Wisdom of Donkeys" I teach. You should come to that class. But donkeys are dope. I don't know so much about elephants, but I'm sure they're better than these people are. So.
Elephants are amazing, actually. Yeah. So you're to that effect, right?
Yeah. My intuition was on spot on.
Yeah, elephants are great. I feel the same way when we call cops pigs. I'm like, oh
I know,
my God,
poor
I
pigs.
love pigs.
They're clean too. They're cleaner than
They
right?
are.
Yeah, it's a lie.
They're cleaner than cops, man. So
That's
that makes
dirty.
Me sad.
Oh, if I could say one more thing too, while we're talking about the cops and the dirtiness, because this just came out. So, Vernon Bateman, we talked a lot on the show. He was falsely arrested and convicted of rape in 1998, 26 years in prison. It's been out. He's still under severe and unconstitutional parole stipulations. The victim recanted 3 different times, right? Over a period of like 2 years. The only eyewitness recanted twice. There's no DNA tying him to anything. And in fact, he requested to be tested for DNA in advance of his trial. We just found out. We're looking for that paperwork, and they denied it, right?
Of course.
And then they tried to say that the evidence room burned down. And so I was like looking all over, like, when the evidence room burned down, I couldn't find any news stories on it. And it's like a little piece of the roof caught fire. Like, for real.
Shut up.
But here's the thing, is that Mary Banks, the detective who framed him, thought that Vern like killed her son's best friend or like nephew, right? And so had him in there for 3 days, and he didn't do it, and didn't say anything, and they had to let him go. And so she was convinced that he killed him, and so that's why she had it out for him. And we've been talking to people in the evidence room, and they're like, yeah, Detective Banks was not right, which is why she didn't show the alleged victim, Vern, in a lineup. She went over to her house, right, with a picture book and pointed him out and said, that's him. And that's why she was like, I've never seen a guy before in my life. And Detective Banks was like, that's him. So this is just what they do. It's just another Monday or Tuesday for them.
Burning. Okay, yeah, he was telling me that like the evidence room burned down, which I was like, that's wild, but like it's just a
I was like, damn, you think it'd be like a news story about it or something like that.
That's wild. That's wild. Also convenient, but like that's wild. I do just like because I love pop references, but like thinking about like the detention centers and like the National Guard being called out to DC, which may or may not happen. But I was watching a cult classic. I was watching Boys in the Hood the other day.
All right.
And the Trey's dad. If you've never seen Boys in the Hood, you should. You should watch Boys in the Hood. Although I always turn it off when my boy's about to get killed. I'm like, all right, and we're done. Or I skip over it. I just didn't watch it this time because I was like, I couldn't do it today. I couldn't do it that day. But spoiler, because the movie's been out since like
1992.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you haven't seen it, it's a 33-year-old movie. But like Furious, Trey's dad, in like the beginning of the movie, he's talking about how, he became a dad at 17, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna go to Nam. I'm gonna go to Vietnam, and I'm gonna like try and be a good model for my child, and I'm gonna get some money. And he goes to Vietnam, and he says, the army is not a place for Black people. It's not a place for the Black man. And which, like, that is important for this movie. But that's important for like all, honestly, poor people to know, like, military is not a place for you. And exactly like Derek said, rightly, they're sending, who do they send in these wars? Who do they send to get killed off? People who they don't actually care about. It's always like poor, mainly boys from like these poor neighborhoods. I went to Pike High School, and like I remember them like in their little table in the lunchroom, and like recruiting my classmates, you know. And like I didn't think anything of it. I come from a military family, so I didn't think anything of it. But like that's how my family got in the military as well, right? Like my grandfather was, children of sharecroppers, and like that's what he was like. This is how I'm gonna make it out, you know.
Yeah, a lot of people. A lot of radicals.
Yeah,
Mary Haywood. Right?
Exactly. And then, before Ricky gets killed, he's like watching. He's also a teen dad, and he's watching this commercial comes on for the army, and he's like, yeah, you can be anything you want to be. You go to the army, and he's like a teen dad, and he doesn't have any money, and he's just like trying to make it out the hood, and he's like, I'm just gonna go to the army, and then he gets killed anyway. So, but it's just a reminder, right, that like this is the setup, right? Like this American, you can get the American dream if you go and you kill other poor people, right? Yep. You go across seas and you kill other poor people, and when you come back here, you're still like, right, you can still get killed here. The cops can still kill you here. You're still poor here. Like
no social services, no housing.
Absolutely not. The VA is like, I feel some type of way about the VA. I feel like the VA really does. The people at the VA try. Yeah. But
they
like
ain't got nothing.
Nothing. And then they ask armed forces, and they ask, the National Guard to like go and arrest poor people here in this country and send them back to places they've never been to, or places they don't remember, or just in general, whatever. They came here for a reason, and just have us doing their dirty work for them, and it continues on and on and on. And if they refuse because they have a consciousness, or because they
got support,
they have support, whatever,
they know it's an option.
Yeah. The consequences of refusing are huge, not the same as for the cops, right? We've talked about that before. Like the cops can refuse and nothing happens to them. Like
they're just call sick.
Yeah. Like they're able to do
They get
that.
like double pay.
All right. So that's it for the Naptown Breakdown. We will be right back with Derek and Bryce.
Welcome back to Naptown People's Radio. This is Derek Ford, and I'm honored to be joined by Bryce Gustafson of the Citizens Action Coalition. Welcome to the show, Bryce.
Thank you so much for having me tonight.
So, Bryce, you've been with the Citizens Action Coalition since 2009, and you've been program organizer since 2019?
Yep.
All right. And so that has lately, of course, entailed organizing around the data centers that are popping up everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Which is why we wanted to have you on the show, because I was telling you earlier, we had somebody on, who gave their firsthand experience of what it was like living next to one of these things. And then we've talked about some other dynamics of particular ones. But, given that your depth and range of knowledge about data centers in general, and the ones here in Indiana in particular, we wanted to have you on it sort of talk about a higher level, outlook and, history of these things, right? And what are they? I mean, a lot of people don't really know what they are. Sure. So, I mean, actually, why don't we start there? Like, can you tell us what is a data center?
Sure. Well, a data center is the physical manifestation of the internet. So anytime you get on the internet, there's whatever you do on the internet is going to go through these data centers. So yeah, data centers are the physical manifestation of the internet. Anytime you jump on there, it's going, whatever you're doing is running through a data center, whether that's cloud. Data centers can use or can be storage for cryptocurrency. And the latest iteration is these AI data centers. And that's really what the big difference is with what's going on right now. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. And I always thought it was interesting that they called it the cloud, because it makes it seem like it's like ethereal and it's like nowhere, but it's like, actually, no, this is taking up massive amounts of energy and like raw materials and, from the earth And, yeah. So AI, artificial intelligence, it's always, I mean, personally, I don't know if that's a good term for it, because I think, I don't know if computers can be intelligent, like they can compute, but what is the qualitative distinction between the AI data center and like the, storage data center, for example?
Well, I'll preface this by saying I'm no expert in this technology necessarily, but regular data centers, they run off of CPUs, and AI data centers run off of GPUs. They use a lot more energy, a lot more computational power to get you the answer for whatever question you're asking with OpenAI. And AI, it's an interesting term that was coined back in the 50s by a professor who was looking for funding for a summertime gig type of thing. So it was a marketing term. So there's no such thing as, every AI is a little bit different, but the what we're dealing with OpenAI, with ChatGPT, that sort of thing, that's generative AI or large language models, and that's what's driving this data center boom. Mm-hmm. They need compute at any cost, scale at any cost type of thing. So yeah, that's the difference. And I've been out to 2 times this year. I was fortunate enough to go out to Northern Virginia, where Data Center Alley's at. There's over 200 data centers out there. 70% of our regular internet goes through there. So when I hear, developers or decision makers say we need these to keep our internet going, I'm like, yeah, I've been to Northern Virginia. That's where our internet's going through right now. So this is a different beast. Right.
Yeah. And so it's not like a NIMBY thing, like we just don't want them here. It's like we don't need AI data centers at all.
Yeah.
Or we need very few of them, or they need to be tightly regulated, or
all the above, really, okay. Because you talk to some people again that are way smarter than me in the field, and they say what they're doing right now is already obsolete. And you see what's happened with these open source models, such as DeepSeek, that came out earlier this year, that uses 10% of the power versus a ChatGPT, and you can literally download it on your computer and run it on an open source and play around with it and make it your own, that sort of thing. So you have this argument as far as large language models, whether you actually need all this compute, all these data centers. And it seems to me, and again, people that you read and listen to that know this stuff, these data centers could already be obsolete if they're not going to be obsolete in the near future.
Yeah. And so now when I search anything at any I'd use it like DuckDuckGo, I think, and there's still like an AI thing that automatically comes up and it tries to give me the answers and it tells me where it's pulling from. And so is that, and like, I don't see the difference between that and just doing a search, honestly.
Right.
But it's just using a bunch more electricity and energy and water, whatever.
Yeah. If you put in a question, if you do it right now, if you're listening, what's the color of the sky? Maybe something a little more complicated than that, but it'll take all of its data to give you and put it into one place to give you that answer. And the interesting thing about that is, like, if you ask it a complex question, ChatGPT, you're going to get a different answer every time because they're pulling from all these sources of data. They have to train these models, and that's the issue with this. Every model they train, they have to get more data to train it. They have to build more data centers, so on and so forth. And the idea, and this is still in OpenAI's mission statement, they're talking about artificial general intelligence, and that's the goal, is to train these models, these large language models, so someday we'll get to a point where this generative AI is going to be as smart as humans. And then eventually we're going to get to artificial superintelligence, which is like, we're all going to be able to kick back our feet and none of us will have jobs and so on and so forth. But the problem with that, and there was just a survey that came out that 75% of AI scientists are like, there's no scientific backing to that idea.
Yeah.
But that's how this whole thing was sold when OpenAI came out with ChatGPT, and eventually we're just all going to be able to, again, kick back and nobody's going to have a job. And, so the Wall Street's very excited about that because we don't have to pay any workers and have to deal with any of their complaints and all that stuff. And that's really why, at least that's how it started. Now they're Sam Altman, ChatGPT's CEO, a few months ago was like, we'll stop talking about artificial general intelligence. We just want to make cool stuff for you.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, under capitalism, at least, like the only reason a boss would invest in technology is if it would, be the same, cost as labor or, less. And of course, like to break strikes because machines just don't strike and they don't complain and they don't show up late to work or whatever.
Not yet.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. You can, mess with them. Yeah, and I mean, I just haven't been impressed by any of this stuff either. I had, I'm a teacher, and whenever this comes up in these settings, I'm always just like, oh God, try to bow out because the only experience I had is I had a student write a paper, and the first paragraph was terrible. And so my feedback, I was like, Cook, I don't mind saying his name because, I said, Cook, use Chat GPT next time. This is terrible. And he was like, you caught me. I used Chat GPT. And I was like, you could have like that. You are smarter than this. Like this computer doesn't know this stuff, like it doesn't know how to put these two books into conversations. And so when professors are complaining about it, I'm just like, well, if a computer can do your homework, like, or your assignments, write better assignments.
Right.
Like, because computers, I think, ultimately can't think. Like, thought is, thought is something different than like they can, have information.
Right.
And they can, but like where are they pulling it from?
From everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. As a former recovering artist, would you want your material? And we've seen that artists are pretty much vehemently opposed to AI because they are stealing their work and turning it into their product. And the other phenomenon I just wanted to raise, when they take that data from the internet or scrape it from various sources, they start pumping out slop, and the next model recycles that slop. So you're going to hit a level with these LLMs. But there was some controversy. I'll just say this, put it this way, but ChatGPT 5 came out and everybody was in love with ChatGPT 4, and ChatGPT 5 came out. Everybody's like, what happened? And so, again, listening to some and talking and reading some of this stuff, you say the listening to this stuff, reading what you can about it, but they'll talk about how the bigger the model, the worse off the model actually gets because you're just getting information that's just slop. So I've used AI before, and I wasn't like, oh, this is amazing, groundbreaking stuff. Apparently, the number one use case for ChatGPT right now is therapy. So there are some use cases for AI. Again, generative AI is a whole different animal. There's specific use AI that you can program it in your phone or a stethoscope, whatever. But that's a different animal than what they're trying to do with ChatGPT.
Yeah, I mean, just a word on that, because my wife, when she went, she also teaches, and they have a propaganda day at the beginning of the semester, to tell you the new buzzwords for cutting pay or whatever. Like the new nice language for like, oh, we're slashing your health insurance, but we're collaborating, and they also present like a model of what the incoming student is like. And one thing she learned was like, I can't remember the percentage, but like a lot of young people are lonely and they're going and they're talking to AI bots. And I mean, to me, that's not a reason to have AI. That's like a symptom of a sick society in which we're completely alienated from each other, that we would do that. I mean, it's just sad, really. That's no reason to use any of this stuff.
No, people should get out there and meet people in their community. There's a lot of good people out there.
Yeah.
So
yeah. like your neighbors.
Chat GPT is not gonna fill that hole for you.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And the fight against Google, I think, was quite historic. I mean, the people of Indianapolis beat out Google, at least for now. And then but it's not the only fight. I know you're involved in many, and I know that we're recording on Monday nights, the 24th, and you just came back from a meeting of the Martindale Brightwood Coalition, and we had Pastor Denell Howard on here before talking about that, and so I wanted to kind of get your take on what you think, because Metro Blocks is they haven't even built a data center.
Correct.
They got like $4.5 million or something like that. And so they're making these bold claims, but there's like literally nothing to back them up. And I noticed that when they first acquired property in Miami, the press release or whatever said that they had 5 listed in the United States and then 1 in Milan. But then when I went to the website, Milan was gone and Paris was there. And so was Indianapolis, right? Like they're just moving forward with it. So, and that's our whole thing. I think, like, I don't know what you think about this, but, Google's this massive thing, like everybody knows, bigger the corporation, the worse they are. So Metro Blocks maybe was like, well, we can come in and sneak in and be like, hey, we're friendly, we're small, we're eco, whatever, sustainable. Is that kind of like, is that your read on it, or?
Well, I would say that the developers are looking for the pathway of least resistance.
Yeah.
In all of these situations. So they're, we don't know what conversations they're having because it's all hidden behind NDAs.
Yeah.
But, you can assume they've been talking to local government officials. They've been talking to the landowners. There was a report for months, I should say, before it becomes publicly known. There was a good NBC news report about some folks down in Kentucky, and there was a doctor who got a knock on his door one day, and it was a lawyer saying, hey, I'll buy up your land for $100,000 an acre or whatever it is. And he said, well, who's the end buyer? And we can't tell you that, but we do want to give you a nice check. And fortunately, the doctor said, no, you're not going to do that. This is my family farm, that sort of thing. So you get the knock on the door. They talk with the landowner, says yes. They have them sign NDAs. They talk with local officials, have them sign NDAs. It's all very hush hush. And what they're looking for are good partners within the community. Those elected officials. And who knows how this deal came down, but it's that's the MO with these folks, and it's a gold rush as well. I mean, they're looking everywhere. We're tracking at least 40 of these projects across the state right now, and the Metro Blocks project is a little bit different. It's only quote unquote 75 megawatts. It's supposed to be one of these smaller data centers, but I think the theme still resonates: the lack of transparency, the fact that we're kind of just telling you what we're going to do rather than having robust community conversations, and because they don't want to ask people. They're going to say, especially now, they're going to say no.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know if I answered their question, but go on about it. But
and even though I was looking at their website, and one of their commitments is to collaboration with the community, and so I know they had one public meeting, but then they canceled the next one.
Right.
As soon as there was a protest. So it kind of shows you exactly what they don't stand by their principles and whatnot. So I guess what are some you're a program organizer. What are some things that everyday people who are listening can do to get involved? I know you have petitions on your website, as well as other information, action steps, for different folks to take.
Sure. Yeah. There's a wealth of knowledge on our website. We've got a couple webinars on there. We do have it's what we call a phone to action. It goes to state lawmakers, encouraging them to support a moratorium. We called on a moratorium back in October of last year.
Okay.
And had a little bit of interest, but unfortunately it didn't go through the state house last year. keeping track of what's going on in your local community. It's not the funnest thing in the world to like go to any meeting really,
Yeah.
and they kind of bank on that.
Yeah.
Usually there's the same 3 people that show up maybe every month, but keeping your ear to the ground about any potential projects coming to your community. It's been very what's been very helpful has been Facebook talking about big tech, but there's all kinds of these community groups out there, and once somebody finds out, hey, there's a potential project, they sound the alarm, and then all of a sudden everybody in the community's finding out about it. And that's really how when I jump on Facebook, the algorithms got me. So everything that comes up is about data centers or high utility bills or whatever. But and then if the community's wanting to push back, you gotta talk with your neighbors. Going back to what we just talked about, you actually have to organize with your neighbors, start showing up. People in communities have done everything from knocking on doors, putting out yard signs. I see yard signs everywhere nowadays.
Yeah.
So on and so forth, billboards and that sort of thing. But it really is, it is incumbent on communities to start talking to their decision makers as well, because that the other side has been doing it for months. So
Yeah. Right. And they're paid to do it.
That's right. And they're very good at what they do. I mean, who wouldn't want to be wined and dined for months on end, saying this is the best thing since sliced bread and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. One of our people today was just like, we're not outnumbered. We're just out organized. And that's the main thing. They're very well organized, and we just have to be better organized, and, we can shut them down.
Yep.
All right. Well, and this is also, the speculation, more than speculation, there's really evidence that this is a bubble that's, I don't know, not bursting quite yet, but, bubbling up. I heard maybe as high as $1 trillion. I don't know, being propped up by the big 4. And so, that's the other question, like, is this going to last, or is it just going to cause some kind of recession in a month, or, who knows? Maybe it'll just be confined to one area. Maybe it'll spread throughout the, different sectors. But, I know you're not an economist or whatever, but what's your, I don't know if you had to take a guess, what would you say?
Well, again, folks that I read and listen to that I can trust are all saying it's a bubble. We've had, for the first time in a long time, AI and data center spending is number one on our GDP growth. Like, if we didn't have that, if we didn't have those costs, we would probably be in a recession at this point. And somebody coined the phrase, we're just, our economy's 3 trench coats, or 3 data centers in a trench coat right now.
Yeah.
So, when you pour all of your eggs into one basket, that's not a good sign. And they're talking about ChatGPT again, or OpenAI, I should say. They want to spend $1.4 trillion in the next 5 years on data centers, and it seems unlikely that's actually going to happen. And then there's a phenomenon of they're just circular financing. They call it round tripping, where they're just, here's $100. I'm going to give you $100. You're going to give me $100 back. So it seems a little bit wonky. I'll just put it that way, as far as how this stuff is financed. And Wall Street has been apparently okay with all this CapEx spending, because the stocks are going up through the roof.
Yeah.
But the last quarter, second quarter, some investors were like, well, we're okay with it as long as AI is showing some profit. And the problem is, because it's so expensive, and they don't have a real good use case on, what we can use this to make profit. They're really not making profit. The people who are making profit are, the chip makers, developers, construction people, but the companies that actually provide, they're not making money off of AI.
Yeah.
And they used to say that they're going to do it. It's going to be like 5 years, but I don't know if anybody's got patience for that. On the finance side of things, and especially on, the regular everyday Hoosier or American side of things.
Yeah.
And the irony is, they talk about jobs a lot and it's going to provide a lot of jobs, but the end game here is to take all of our jobs again. And It's like, how popular is that going to be for everybody that's just trying to make a living and, live their best life and whatnot. But
Yeah.
I wish I had a crystal ball, but all signs point to the fact that this is a bubble, and it's very comparable to 2008 housing bubble, 1999
.com.
.com.
It's like
Thank
a mix
you.
of both, right?
And 1929, the Great Depression. I don't know. So I hope it doesn't come to that. It's really it's scary as far as that goes. But there's a definite threat of an overbuild too, and it's not just with the data centers. It's the bottleneck with this stuff is going to come at the electricity level. Like, how are we going to power these things? Because of the high demand, there's components within gas turbines that have a 7-year waiting period. So
That's going to be before after they turn a profit, apparently.
Yeah, they'll be able to pay for it. Just put it on our tab. It's fine. But, so our concern at CAC, one of our big concerns about this is if, AES builds out a few $1 billion worth of tens of billions of dollars worth of power generation, and this whole thing goes belly up, who's gonna foot the bill on that? And as we've seen, through legislation over the years, the utilities have done everything to shift costs, shift risk from their shareholders to ratepayers, and that's a whole different ball of wax. But that's one of our concerns for sure.
And like consumers, not businesses. Or consumers more so than businesses. At least
correct.
I remember that was with the Google. So like when they first requested the rate hike, it was going to disproportionately affect consumers like you and me rather than like businesses.
Correct. And with that AES rate increase, that had nothing to do with any data centers. That was strictly on its own. For whatever reason, they decided to come out with this massive rate increase ask. And this is really complicated stuff, but there's 3 rate classes. There's residential, consumer, and industrial.
Okay.
And our utility commission, the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, says, okay, we're going to allocate the costs. Industrial is going to pay a certain amount, residential is going to pay another amount, and commercial is going to pay another amount. And what that's another troubling trend here in Indiana is residential customers get disproportionately hit when the utilities ask for a rate increase. And our focus is on residential ratepayers always, but we've gotten the short end of the stick as far as rate increases over the last several years. Really pretty much since the founding of CAC back in 1974. But that's a deep concern of ours. And just for what it's worth, industrial customers, we all pay X amount for kilowatt hours, that sort of thing. But industrial customers pay the least amount per kilowatt hour. They're
making jobs, right?
Making jobs, yeah. And they use a lot more, and they make their own little side deals and that sort of thing. Residential customers, we pay a lot more, and then commercial customers, mom and pop joints, they pay the highest kilowatt hour. But in another aspect of this is, it would be one thing, I guess, if that dynamic was the way it is, I guess, now. But Indiana, we don't have any protections for residential customers.
Yeah,
like very few, I should say, but no statutory regulations as far as, like, in Ohio, they have a percentage of income payment plan where if you're under a certain income level, your utility expenses are capped at 6%.
Yeah.
We don't have that in Indiana.
Right.
So if you're going to make your billions or trillions of dollars or whatever it is, at least take care of grandma, grandpa, folks on, a fixed income. That's the very least you could do.
Especially if you're a monopoly. I mean,
right.
It's like it's a monopoly with very little oversight. And you organize, people organize, they protest, and, maybe, some impact. But at the end of the day, why isn't it publicly owned and under public control? Like, Same thing with the internet, same thing with Google, same thing with housing. It's like, why is we all use energy and we need it.
Right.
So why don't we plan for it and just like, shouldn't it just be a human right? I mean, not to use, however much, the AI centers are, but like the average home, right?
It's an essential human service. And fun fact, there is one state that has publicly owned utilities. That's Nebraska.
Okay.
And coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, they have some of the lowest utility bills in the state because they have direct representation. If we do have
that.
Yeah, shocking, right? We have municipally run utility companies like Anderson's the largest one in Indiana, and if they want to raise a bill, they're going to have to face the consequences down the road, and they have to be more responsible stewards of that public money. You know, and we don't have that dynamic with investor-owned monopoly utilities. For every dollar they spend, they make a profit on, guaranteed. So what's their motivation?
Right,
and that's why those folks, the utilities are such big fans of these data centers as well, because they're going to make a ton of money building out that power generation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say it was just, last Friday when AES had to admit that they, a small glitch caused a small number of customers to receive, these deposit bills that were like 4 times what they should have been. The stock market dropped.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah. I just happened to be looking it up at the same time. I was like, oh, that's interesting, So it shows you that there's really 2 sides in this. I mean, to simplify it, but there's those who are in it for the profit and those who are in it for the people.
Yeah.
And it's good to have you on the side of the people, especially doing this so long, and CAC with such a long track record. And I also will say, we appreciate all the work that you do, because you're not just, the energy guy. You were with us with the library struggle, and I don't know if you're a trained photographer or you just take really good photos, but we always appreciated you sending us the photos, letting us use them, So thank you for that. We always want to thank you for that.
You're very welcome. I came from a artistic background, and COVID hit, and I was like, I really wanted to get a nice camera. Especially, I record meetings, especially if there's no recording going on. I'm about 10 projects behind, but as far as editing, it's I think it's good to document these struggles, because it just doesn't. Media is not able to cover all of this stuff, and I don't think they do it. Not knocking them necessarily, but they don't do it in the depth that it really takes in some of these instances. So, but no, it's my pleasure as far as that goes. It's I'm not trained, just self-taught, I guess.
Good,
but yeah.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you for that, and appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you again, Bryce.
You're very welcome.
All right. Well, that's it. We'll take a break and be right back with more Naptown People's Radio. And we're back on Naptown People's Radio. We hope you enjoyed learning from Bryce as much as I did personally. So, Danny, who gets the Circle City shout out this week?
So the Circle City shout out goes out to Nikki Schumpert. So Nikki is a community member who you will often find helping out the community in various ways, from working with our food insecure members of our community, sometimes along with the Office of Public Health and Safety. She also has a line dancing class that meets every Thursday at Pride Park from 5:30 to 7. In addition to that, Ms. Schumpert is also a foster mom and has adopted and raised multiple children over the years who have gone on to do amazing things with their lives. Unfortunately, on February 25th of this year, 2025, IMPD killed one of her children, Adam Sykes, which just like as a human being, but also as a parent, that's like that's my grandmother always used to say, like, parents should not bury their children. So whenever we're working with families of those who were victims of IMPD terror, it's always just like a gut-wrenching experience, no matter how many times it happens. Now, yesterday, November 24th, Adam would have been 25 years old. We in the PSL and at Naptown People's Radio want to give a special shout out to Nikki. She is a fighter in multiple different fights for the people. And, if you ever meet her, she often says that she is out here fighting not just for justice for Adam, but all victims of IMPD terror. So special shout out to Nikki's granddaughter also, who is Adam's 9-year-old daughter, who is going into remission after battling cancer for the past 2 years, which is, good news for that family. And it's just truly just a family of fighters. So, we're down with Nikki until the end. And shout out to Nikki Schumpert.
Yeah, shout out to Nikki Schumper. I mean, I think I'll never forget when we were organizing the Common Unity 2 concert with Leon Benson. Mm-hmm. And turns out, of course, LB mentored Adam, during a brief stint.
Of course he did.
Vernon knew him. Mm-hmm. And so we got to connect them all together, and they got to tell her exactly what kind of a guy he was inside, the same as he was outside. And, the other thing about Nikki is that this tragic loss, she kept fighting that fight, but also she kept helping other people.
Absolutely.
She didn't let it detract from her work. So, she's somebody that we really look up to at the center here, and hopefully can have her on the podcast soon. So before we close out, just a couple of announcements. So Saturday, as always, Circle City Sangha at the Liberation Center. And then this Sunday, we are proud to have our first Emancipatory Motions with Senna Kirk. This is a political yoga practice that repairs the damage that capitalist alienation causes by reconnecting us with ourselves as beings in complex motion and in complex motion together. So they're going to be meeting at the Liberation Center every Sunday at 6 p.m. To support Senna and the center, we ask for a $10 to $15 donation, although no one's turned away for a lack or excess of funds. And you can make your donation at the door or visit indieliberationcenter.org/yoga donation. The other thing is that we are currently organizing the worldwide premiere of the new Shaka A. Shakur documentary, Across the Lines. That's going to be Thursday, December 4th at 8:30 p.m. ET. We are going to be doing it here at the Liberation Center. Doors will open about 7:30 because we'll have a brief program beforehand. So far, we've got places showing it in Richmond, in California, in Athens, Greece, and we really just started promoting it. So do what you can, because this is a do or die moment for Shaka, for real. So yeah, that's it for this episode of Naptown People's Radio. If you found today's discussion useful, pass it on, leave a comment, and listen for our next episode to drop. Email us at producer@naptownpeoplesradio.com if you have a suggestion for the show. The road ahead is long, but we walk it together. Study with your comrades, build with your community, and always remember, theory without action is paralysis, but action without theory is chaos. Once again, I'm your host, Derek Ford, here with my comrade and co-host,
Danny Abdullah.
Stay dangerous, stay disciplined, and stay in the struggle.
We trying to create a movement. We got a chance to do something in Indiana that brothers like myself been talking about for the last 40 years. When I first became political and we was organized behind the walls in the 80s and 90s, some of the stuff that we doing now with the different programs and the different institutions that we have and things like the Indie Center is things that we used to talk about and dream about doing. And now we doing them. See what I'm saying? We doing it. And we got to keep that momentum going. And it's also generation. So as the next generation come up, you know what I'm saying, it's on y'all to take it to the next level and take it to the next stage.